Welcome to this explainer. If you've spent any time in web development, you know React is an incredibly powerful JavaScript library, but wow, is it packed with dense jargon. Words like reconciliation, composition, error boundaries, they get thrown around constantly, and honestly, it can be pretty overwhelming. But don't worry, because today we're going to break all of that down. By the end of our time together, you're going to have a crystal clear, highly visual mental model of exactly how React works.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We're hitting 1. Components and props. 2. Rendering and virtual DOM. 3. Events and managing state. 4. The magic of hooks. And 5. Advanced React features. We're literally going from the most microscopic UI units right up to massive architectural techniques. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, Components and Props. To really understand React, we've got to start at the very foundation, with the absolute smallest building blocks of the UI.
So, a component is simply a JavaScript function that returns markup. Think of them exactly like Legos. You can use these pieces as many times as you want to build buttons, inputs, or even entire sprawling web pages. But there is a bit of a catch. Because standard JavaScript functions can only return one thing, your component absolutely must return a single parent element. If you try to return multiple elements side by side, React is going to throw a huge error. To fix this, without cluttering up your page with a frustrating div soup, you can use what's called a React fragment. It's essentially just an empty, invisible component that wraps your elements perfectly.
And this brilliantly illustrates a key difference. React doesn't actually construct markup with standard HTML. Instead, we write JSX. It's basically JavaScript in disguise. And honestly, it's a fantastic alternative to the highly annoying create element function that, let's face it, no one actually wants to write. But since JSX is JavaScript, you can't use standard HTML attributes. Instead, you've got to use camel case, so class becomes class name. But the real magic here? The curly braces. By dropping curly braces into your JSX, you can insert dynamic JavaScript values, like strings, numbers, or even style objects directly into your markup. It takes static, unchanging HTML and makes it completely dynamic.
Now you might be wondering, how do we actually get data into these components? Well, we use props. Props are basically custom attributes you add to a component to pass data through object parameters, and you can pass absolutely anything as a prop. You can even pass other components using the children prop. By placing components between the opening and closing tags of a parent, you unlock this optimal composition, which is incredibly useful for creating consistent, common layouts across your entire app. And finally, if you're generating lists of components using a map function, you absolutely must use the key prop. This is just a unique string or number that helps React tell one component apart from another. If you forget it, React will definitely yell at you with a big warning in the console.
Okay, so we've got all this amazing dynamic code, but how does React actually take it and display it inside the browser? That brings us to Section 2, Rendering and Virtual DOM.
To understand rendering, we first have to look at the DOM, the Document Object Model. This is what every browser uses to model HTML elements as a giant tree. React, however, uses the virtual DOM, or VDOM. This is React's own lightweight, much quicker to update copy of that exact tree. Basically, React handles the heavy lifting of interacting with the real DOM for us. And this is a massive lifesaver because it prevents us from writing bad code that causes infinite re-renders and completely crashes the application.
So here's exactly how that rendering process happens, step by step. First, the state of our app changes. Second, React updates the virtual DOM. Third, React performs a really clever process called diffing, where it compares the brand new virtual DOM to the previous version to find exactly what is different. And finally, step 4, reconciliation. React takes those specific differences it found and updates the real DOM with just those exact changes. It's highly efficient and incredibly fast.
Right, now that we have our structure and understand how it renders, we need to breathe some life into it. Moving on to Section 3, Events and Managing State. We need to handle user events like clicks, mouse movements, and key presses.
There's a quote that completely changed how I look at React. It goes, "State is like a snapshot from a camera. It's a picture of our app at any given time." This is absolutely fundamental to grasp. Normal JavaScript variables do not cause our app to render. If a user clicks a button, changing a standard variable won't update the screen at all. To actually change the UI, we have to connect built-in events, things like onClick or onChange or onSubmit, to special state management functions like useState or useReducer.
And the most common way to manage this snapshot is the useState function.
It takes a starting argument, basically an initial value, and it returns an array containing two crucial things: the current state variable itself, like say the number of likes, and a specific function to update that state, like set clicks. When you fire off that update function, React takes a brand new snapshot and re-renders the app.
So the crucial point is how this completely transforms how we handle user inputs, creating what we call controlled components. When a user types into an input field, the update function instantly puts that type data into state. The state value updates, and then the input uses that newly updated state as its actual displayed value. The input is entirely controlled by the state variable, guaranteeing totally predictable behavior. If you want to change the input's behavior, you simply change the state that controls it.
Functions like useState bring us to one of the most powerful concepts in modern web development. Section 4. The magic of hooks. Hooks are basically specialized power tools that let our simple function components hook into complex features.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that we can categorize these power tools into 5 main types: state, context, ref, effect, and performance. They all have very specific purposes, from passing data around to preventing unnecessary background work. But here's the secret. While you will eventually use all of these, the vast majority of your time is going to be spent using just 3: useState, useEffect, and useRef.
But before we look at those other hooks, we really need to talk about purity. React components are supposed to be pure components. Think of this like a mathematical formula. The same input should always return the exact same output, and the component should only ever return its JSX. An impure component, on the other hand, makes the terrible mistake of changing outside variables or objects during the render cycle. That causes the wrong output if it's used more than once. To catch these impure mistakes during development, you can wrap your app in a special strict mode component. It acts as a super convenient, albeit sometimes slightly annoying, guardrail to warn you when you're breaking the rules.
But that raises a big question, right? If components absolutely must be pure, what if we actually need to talk to a server or fetch data or work directly with the browser's DOM? Well, to do that safely, we have to step outside of React entirely. We use the useEffect hook to handle side effects, like fetching data from an API the moment a component loads. And if we need to bypass React to target an actual HTML element directly, say to force the keyboard focus onto a specific input box, we use a ref hook, specifically useRef. Okay, as your application grows from a simple, single page into a sprawling, deeply nested application, you're going to need some heavier machinery. That brings us to our final section, Advanced React Features.
Here's a super common headache. You've got data at the very top of your app, and a component 10 levels deep needs it. Passing that data as props through every single intermediate component that doesn't actually need it, it's a complete nightmare. React solves this with context. You create a context, wrap a parent component in a special context provider, attach the data, and then any child component, no matter how deep it is, can jump straight to that data using the useContext hook. Boom, problem solved.
And to round out our toolkit, we have 3 really advanced UI tools. First up, portals. Using the create portal function, you can literally teleport a React component into any HTML element you select, totally independent of its parent styles. It's an absolute game changer for modals, drop-down menus, and tooltips. Next is suspense. This is a special component that lets you show a fallback UI, like a spinning loader, while you're waiting for data to fetch, or when you're lazily loading a component. Finally, error boundaries. Since React apps are entirely JavaScript, a single rendering error can crash the whole page. Error boundaries catch those app-breaking errors and display a helpful fallback message to the user instead. It completely saves them from the dreaded blank white screen of death.
And there you have it. We've gone from the tiniest components returning JSX all the way through state management, rendering cycles, and advanced tools like portals and suspense. You now possess a crystal clear mental model of how all these individual pieces assemble into one incredibly powerful, dynamic engine. But here is the real question. Now that you have the blueprint and you understand exactly how the machinery works, what are you going to build with it? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and happy coding!